The Bonanno Crime Family is one of the 5 families that dominates organized crime in New York City. It originated from the picturesque seaside fishing village of Castellammare del Golfo, Sicily. According to mob historians, the Bonanno family began under the leadership of Sebastiano di Gaetano. Later, Nicola Colascira would lead for a time as a weak sister until the threat of death to all the Castellamarese by Joe the Boss Masseria would ultimately catapult Salvatore Maranzano to leadership during the tumultuous Castellamarese war years and the violence that would follow in the late 1920s to early 1930s. After the Castellamarese and their allies had defeated Masseria, and subsequently with Maranzano's own killing, the leadership of the Brigata fell to Giuseppe Joe Bonanno, who would go on to lead one of the most tight-knit, secretive, and cohesive family memberships for the next 35 years. With little fanfare or public exposure, it allowed Joseph Bonanno to accumulate one of the greatest wealth of any mob boss of his era. The Bonanno family boasted a membership of approximately 200 strong with over 750 associates. Some of these members included such iconic mafiosi as feared underboss Carmine Lillo Galante, consigliere Giovanni John Bonventre, Francesco Frankie Carol Garofalo, Stefano Stevie Beef Canone, and Philip Rusty Rastelli. With power bases in gambling, shylocking, legitimate business holdings, and international heroin smuggling through its satellite regimes in both Montreal, Canada, and Sicily, the Bonannos were a very influential family across the entire United States, with members as far away as Arizona, California, Canada, and the Trapani province of Sicily. But by the mid-1960s, Bonanno's heavy-handed leadership style, greed, and ambitions would not only be his personal undoing, but the undoing of the family at large, leading to the so-called Bonanno War, which tore at the very fabric of its membership. A strife-torn family that, to this day, has never fully recovered to the prestige and power it once enjoyed. What I'm about to present now is a rogues gallery featuring various members and key associates of the Bonanno crime family. But before I begin, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. One-time Bonanno big shot Gaspare Di Gregorio poses for photographers during the marriage of a son. Gaspare had served at the right side of boss Joe Bonanno for decades, until a parting of the ways led to the infamous Bonanno War of 1966 to 1969. Late 1960s interim Bonanno boss Paul Sciacca seen here in a mugshot. He took control of their brigada after prior boss Gaspare Di Gregorio stepped down for health reasons. Sciacca was known as a very low-keyed mafioso who owned several large Brooklyn-based garment factories that manufactured military uniforms for the U.S. government. The notorious New Jersey-based Bonanno soldier Joseph Bayonne Joe Ziccarelli shown here leaving court. Here's Westchester-based Capo di Decina Nicolino Nick Alfano. The low-keyed Alfano was finally exposed as a top mafioso during the Bonanno War conflict of the mid-1960s. New Jersey-based capo Gabriel Infante. He was later killed gangland style in 1987. Buffalo soldier Peter Magaddino. He was a cousin to Joe Bonanno, siding with them during the Bonanno War. Frank Bonomo was a little-known Brooklyn-based soldier for decades. He was an active loan shark and thief who operated for many years under the radar. Future Bonanno capo later turned informant Frank Curly Lino. Greenpoint-based soldier Antonio Boots Tomasulo, who was said to have run a lucrative Joker poker machine operation. Boots' son was allegedly killed over his father's assets, which the Bonanno hierarchy wanted for themselves. Capo Smitty D'Angelo and soldier Frankie 500, shortly before they were both machine-gunned to death. Michael Mike the Sailor Casali was a loyal Joe Bonanno soldier who later switched his allegiance to the rebel Di Gregorio faction, who then elevated him to a capo during the 1960s Bonanno War. Casali was most active in gambling and shylock rackets on Long Island. 1977, Lillo Galante entering the federal courthouse with notorious defense attorney Roy Cohn. Antonio Tony Canzoneri was a top-ranked world champion boxer at several weight classes over his career. He was also a reputed inducted member who rose to capo status under Joe Bonanno. He operated a popular hotel and resort lodge in upstate New York after his retirement. and an older Tony Canzaneri. NYPD missing person suspected kidnapping poster for Joseph Bonanno. It became an international manhunt, although law enforcement largely thought it was a hoax. Giovanni Torres, also known as Angel Face, was an early member of what later became the Bonanno Mob. He was a known gunman, bootlegger, and active in prostitution rackets. He hid from a murder charge for a time in Baltimore, Maryland. Santo Manfredi was an early Bonanno soldier and bootlegger who was a close associate of Salvatore Maranzano's faction. He was related to soldiers Vito Mule and Santo Voltaggio. Vito Mule was an old-time Bonanno soldier and bootlegger once arrested for murder. He was closely associated with Joe Bonanno. He was one of those who sided with Bonanno in their 1960s Civil War. Mule later retired to Arizona, joining his boss in exile. Giovanni John Di Bella was born in Montellapri, Sicily. He was a soldier and a partner of Joe Bonanno in a lucrative cheese, mozzarella, and ricotta manufacturing company in Wisconsin, the famed Grande brand. Nicola Nick Guastella was an original member of what became the Bonanno family. He was related to members Vito Mule and Santo Voltaggio. Guastella was an early bootlegger and key member of Sal Maranzano's Castellammare faction who fought Joe Masseria for supremacy during the late 1920s in New York. Guastella later relocated out to California. Sicilian-born mafioso Gaspare Gasparino Magaddino, seen here in a younger photo. He was a cousin to Joe Bonanno and a suspected gunman during their civil war in the triple murder of Jimmy and Smitty D'Angelo and Frank Tullieri in 1967. Longtime soldier James Jimmy Legs Episcopia, and another pic of Jimmy Legs. Nailed by Canadian authorities during the Banana War of the mid-1960s, these top Bonanno members are lined up during their arrest for Rogues Gallery photos. From left to right, Luigi Greco, Patty Di Filippo, Peter Magaddino, Vito Di Filippo, Peter Notaro, Carl Samari, Bill Bonanno. All except Greco were eventually deported back to the U.S. Greco was a Canadian citizen. Dominick Big Trini Trinchera was a little-known Bronx-based soldier later elevated to a captain. He was one of 3 captains murdered along with Sonny Red and Lucky Giacone during a Bonanno power play. They had challenged Phil Rastelli and Joe Messino for the family, and an older Dominick Trinchera. Vittorio Victier Cotroni was a Calabrian-born mafioso who became very close to Joe Bonanno. He was tapped by Bonanno to head the Montreal, Canada regime of that family. He and his brothers ruled for decades. The Cotronis were the conduit for thousands of kilos of heroin smuggled into Canada for redistribution into New York City. Philip Giacone, also known as Lucky Phil, ended up not so lucky after all. He was one of the infamous 3 captains murdered during a Bonanno family power play gone astray. Lucky Phil in better days. Longtime Bonanno Copper regime of their Montreal, Canada crew, Vito Rizzuto was a son of the respected old-line mafioso Niccolo Rizzuto. He also ran a semi-independent faction of his own family, so to speak, but still paid a tribute to the American Bonanno family because of an agreement set by previous mafiosi decades earlier. A shackled Vito Rizzuto arriving at an American airport accompanied by federal agents as he surrenders to start a 10-year RICO sentence for murder conspiracy. Giovanni Gianacquaro was one of the more shadowy and little-known capos of the Bonanno family who was active in Lower Manhattan and the New Jersey areas. He played a pivotal role in the selection of a new leader during the 1960s Banana War. Pornography kingpin Michael Mickey Z. Zaffarano. 1950s to 1970s Bonanno Copper regime Giuseppe Joe Buccellato. He was a Castellammare del Golfo immigrant from an old and respected Mafia family in their homeland who rose to a leadership position in the family. Narcotics dealer Frank Ciao Mancini. The young Sicilian mafioso Cesar Bonventre, also known as the Tall Guy. He was a key overseer and manager of a vast international narcotics network that smuggled hundreds and hundreds of kilos of heroin from Sicily into the U.S. over the course of a decade. A key aide of family acting boss Lilo Galante, Bonventre was suspected of being complicit in the conspiracy to murder Galante in 1979. Boss Joseph Don Peppino Bonanno is seen here being driven away in a Lincoln Continental by his chauffeur and bodyguard. Greenpoint, Brooklyn-based capo Philip Rusty Rastelli served for years as a loyal soldier of the family until later getting bumped up to capo and eventually to the head of the Bonanno family. Unfortunately for Rastelli, he spent most of his best years behind bars, weakening his ability to lead and weakening the overall Bonanno family because of his near-constant incarceration. Bonanno family members Vito Muley, John Morelli, Pete Magaddino, and Joe Bonanno. Associate Frank Santora. He would be killed during a double gangland murder in Brooklyn in the 1980s. Joe Mook, Cesar Bonventre, Tony Mirra, and Toto Catalano. All narcotics traffickers, all Bonanno disciples. 2 would be killed, 1 turned informant, and 1 served several decades in jail. Salvatore Bill Bonanno under arrest in Arizona. Soldiers Antonio Boots Tomasulo and Anthony Mr. Fish Rabito in the 1970s, about the same time they dealt with undercover FBI agent Donnie Brasco. Loose cannon soldier Tony Mirra downtown along Monroe Street. Greenpoint, Brooklyn-based Samuel Hank Perrone was a loyal soldier to Joe and Bill Bonanno. He would lose his life during the 1960s Bonanno War, being shot to death on a Brooklyn street corner. Surveillance pic of Sal Vitale on the left and Anthony Spiro on the right. Bonanno Captain Patrick Patty DiFilippo was an important member in the Bronx regime for years. The son of an old-time Joe Bonanno contemporary Vito DiFilippo, he was jailed for a RICO murder conspiracy ending what had been a low-keyed, up until then, successful underworld career. Assistant Peter Notaro carrying the boss's suitcase in this 1960s photo. Vito Rizzuto's dear friend and a member of his crew was the Bonanno member Gerlando Sciacca, also known as George from Canada. Sciacca became a capo himself, only to later be slaughtered by boss Joe Massino in a power play that included jealousy. He had been the major conduit bridging Montreal and New York and a key narcotics facilitator until his killing. Looking like a Hollywood cast gangster complete with dark glasses, Bonanno capo regime Natale Joe Diamond Evola. Joe Diamond in a more relaxed mood. Mulberry Street Bonanno Captain Alphonse Indelicato, also known as Sonny Red. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Mob Fireside Chat. Before we say goodbye, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And be sure to check the Button Guys website at www.thenewyorkmafia.com to read the full bios on some of the hoodlums mentioned in this rogues gallery, as well as many, many more stories on mobsters and mafia history. Thank you for watching. Until next time.